would like your consent for all of the speakers to give us consent to be able to share the clips, everything, the content from this event. And now let me warmly welcome Dr. Shikha Thapa of the Nepal Development Research Institute to officially begin the event with her opening remarks. Let's begin. Okay. Just a moment. Yeah. Shikha, you there? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
You're audible perfectly.
Thank you, Zoon, for this wonderful hosting. And I would like to welcome all the panelists and distinguished guests. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues, and respected speakers. It is my profound honor to welcome you all to this special webinar on Women in Research and Policy, organized on the occasion of International Women's Day. So this is co-organized with CBER, IBA, and I would also like to thank you, Dr. Lubna, for collaborating and working on the concept that we talked about, I think, 2 months ago, and making it happen. Today we gather to reflect on the global theme, When We Give, We Gain, a message that resonates deeply with our shared commitment to advancing gender-inclusive research, informed policymaking, and equitable leadership across the Global South. I'm also privileged to welcome Professor Syed Akbar Zaidi, Executive Director of IBA, and also Dr. Manjeshwori Singh, Vice President and JETC Program Lead of NDRR, and also our remarkable panel from global leaders. Joining us today include Ms. Sabnam Shivakoti, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, Government of Nepal. Dr. Alice Evans, Visiting Associate Professor at Stanford University. Professor Atinuke Adebanji, Purdue University of USA. Dr. Nausheen H, Professor at City and Regional Planning, IBA. Professor Lorretta, Favour, Chizomam, and Ntoimo, Federal University, Ekiti, Nigeria. Ms. Helani Galpaya, CEO of LIRNEasia. Ms. Manika Gupta, consultant at climate finance at CPI. Dr. Naznin Tabassum, senior lecturer at University of Durban. And Dr. Fahmida Khatun, Executive Director at CPD, Bangladesh, and Dr. Monaza Aslam, Education Economist, University of Oxford, and in a while, Dr. Yasmeen Sabeeh Qazi from QZ Catalyst, and Ms. Ambreen Iftikhar, member of Federal Board of Revenue, will join us shortly. Your collective presence reflects the strength, depth, and diversity of women's leadership across sectors, geographies, and discipline. On behalf of Nepal Development Research Institute and our partners, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to each of you for dedicating your time, expertise, and insight to this important conversation. And I'm confident that today's dialogue will inspire new perspective for stronger collaboration and reinforcement to our shared commitment to a more inclusive and equitable future. So thank you, and I warmly welcome you all to this meaningful gathering. Now I would like to give this forum to Syed Akbar Zaidi for his welcoming remark. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And again, I'll welcome everyone to this to the panel discussion and the forum, the conference. Today, the International Women's Day is held on the 8th of March, and today on the 12th of and Pakistan has its own Women's Day. We celebrate it in February because of historical reasons. So my background is that of a political economist, and I know that the participation by women in statistics in South Asia especially is quite low. In some countries it's very low, and Pakistan seems to be amongst the lowest in the world If you look at the Gender Development Index, Pakistan's ranking is the lowest of the 128 countries which are listed in that. Quite a few countries are not part of that list, but of the countries that are listed, Pakistan has been coming last or second last for the last many years. And last year it was declared as the least developed for women. If you look at Pakistan's HDI figures, if you look at participation by women in economic and other activities, again, it is amongst the lowest in the world, not just in the region, but the lowest in the world. We also find, active silence by male researchers and policymakers when it comes to women. Policies are made in Pakistan and globally as well, as if women don't even exist. As somebody who's an economist who works on political economy issues, I find it extremely difficult to consider any sort of economic, social, political, environmental, or employment related, or any type of policy which excludes women. I think there's a gender blindness which takes place, obviously largely by men, who sort of ignore the presence of women in different spheres of production, of economy, of society, and it's as if women don't even exist. And this at a time when it is very obvious to everyone, men and women, children, men and women, that without women's active participation in the economy, in society, one could not have either the economy or society existing. Whether women work in the informal sector, a different or domestic sector, whether they work as unpaid labor at home, women's participation is foundational to every element of economy and society in every country, not just developing, especially more so in the global south and in the third world and developing countries. But even in developed countries, it's something that is not part of um, the economic statistics. It's not part of the GDP. For example, the women's participation rate for women in the formal economy is 21% only, which is very low, but that completely ignores women's role and participation in the economy outside of whatever the government considers as statistics which need to be quoted. So I think that a conference which looks at policy, research, and the role of women is something that we should be having such workshops and conferences frequently, so that participants and others who are watching and who are involved in such forums are aware that there are women who are doing active research. And I mean, in this panel, I know some of the women who are participants, and their research work is more than that of a lot of male colleagues put together at different universities and different institutions, including my own. So I think one needs to recognize that, and I hope that in the discussion that takes place, that we move beyond a preliminary discussion, that we actually actively work on how women's participation in research and policy making can be emphasized and underscored wherever that takes place. So thank you for this opportunity to welcome you, and I'll hand it over to my colleague, uh, Professor Lubna Naz, and to the other participants, to Zoon. And thank you for this opportunity to just a small inclusion, and just a reminder, although I know that most scholars here and activists and researchers here don't need to be reminded, but that we cannot have the economy, we cannot have society, we cannot have research, we cannot have policy in a world which is gender blind, without not just the participation, but the active involvement and sort of active role by women in every single element of society, whether it's the economy, whether it's research, whether it's the university, there can be no progress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akbar Zaid, sir, for your valuable time and your opening remarks. And I think you being here is very encouraging for us. And now I would like to welcome Dr. Manjeshwori Singh, who is the Vice President at NDRI, for the opening remarks on behalf of NDRI.
Thank you, Dr. Pita. Namaste, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar on the role of women in research and policy across the global south, organized in celebration of International Women's Day 2020. On behalf of the Nepal Development Research Institute, I warmly welcome our distinguished speakers, colleagues, and participants joining us from across Nepal and around the world. I would also like to acknowledge our co-organizer, the Center for Business and Economic Research, IBA. International Women's Day is both a celebration and a moment for reflection. It recognizes the achievement, leadership, and resilience of women, while reminding us of the work that still lies ahead to advance rights, justice, and opportunity for all women and girls. This year's theme, When We Give, We Give, reminds us that we invest in women's knowledge, leadership, and opportunity. The benefits extend far beyond individuals. Stronger institutions, better research, and more equitable development outcomes emerge when women are supported and empowered. Gender equality is not just about recognition. It is about creating opportunities, removing barriers, and ensuring that women's voices are heard in shaping our society. Women play a vital role in research and development. We contribute new knowledge, innovative ideas, and perspectives shaped by their experiences and engagement with policy. When women are actively involved in research, the outcomes are often more representative and responsive to local priorities. Despite these contributions, women continue to face barriers, including limited leadership opportunity, restricted access to research funding and professional networks, and underrepresentation in decision-making spaces. Addressing these challenges is essential not only for advancing gender equality, but also for strengthening the quality and impact of research itself. While it is encouraging to see more women taking on leadership and policy roles, continued effort is needed to ensure sustained progress. For research institutions like ours, this day also reminds us of the importance of gender-responsive research. At NDRI, we believe that research should reflect diverse perspectives. NDRI works to generate evidence that informs policy while creating opportunities for women researchers and practitioners to engage in knowledge production and policy dialogue. NDRI also has a women leadership embarked by Dr. Shikha as the executive director with more than 50% women staff. Through our work in areas such as water and climate, economic development, health and education, livelihood and food security, and social development, we aim to promote research that is inclusive, locally grounded, and relevant for policy and practice. Gender-responsive research is therefore vital. It goes beyond simply including women as beneficiaries, but as leaders, innovators, and agents for change within their communities and institutions. It requires understanding the social, economic, and structural context that shapes women's life and opportunities. Today's webinar provides us an opportunity to celebrate achievement, exchange experiences, and reflect on how institutions and network can further support women in research and policy process. When women and girls have the space to contribute and lead, we see stronger policies, deeper knowledge, and more sustainable development outcomes. As we mark International Women's Day, let us commit to building research environment that value collaboration, mentorship, and inclusion. And let us ensure that women across the global south and around the world can fully participate in shaping knowledge, policy, and development for a more equitable and sustainable future. Thank you very much for joining us today, and I look forward to the discussions ahead and to the collective action, we can take to advance right, justice, and action for all women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Manjeshwori Singh. So now we have officially welcomed all our panelists with the opening remarks from the True Institute. Now I would like to go into our panel section and give this platform to Zoon Ahmed Khan for the moderation and for all the panelists to provide their insight on women in research and policy from Global South. Thank you.
I hope I'm audible to everyone. Thank you so much. And I think, the welcoming remarks have really set the tone. One of the most important things that we as women in this century, in this time, need to understand is that we have both the role and responsibility to make a difference, regardless of the field, regardless of, what kind of organization you're a part of. I think every person, whether it's a man or woman, like Mr. Akbar Zaidi mentioned, we can collectively change perceptions, move away from gender blindness. And that notion, till 2 decades ago, I think in a lot of developing countries, especially in the Global South, there was a notion that gender inclusion, gender targeted programs are just for the benefit of some women. But we have seen through data, through progress in multiple countries, including China, where I'm based, that inclusion of women and focusing on their well-being, their participation has an exponential impact on the economy, on society, on the next generation. So today we are extremely privileged with efforts of both our organizers to have a very diverse panel, experts from universities, from government organizations, from NGOs, from INGOs, who have various research expertise and bring a wide range of experiences, specifically working on gender inclusion, whether it's finance, whether it's climate, whether it's other areas of participation. And one of the conversations that we want to focus on in this panel is that how can we move forward from that conversation, which is just about what can we do for the benefit of women, versus how is women's role as leaders, as shapers, as researchers, and as decision makers having an increasing impact. Secondly, we know that the Global South as a collective is in many ways lagging behind when it comes to gender equality. We have the SDGs, we have a common mission, we have all our priority areas marked. But the extent to which we are able to make tangible progress will definitely depend on how we can create synergy, how we can also expand South-South cooperation, share experiences that are working in more relevant scenarios, and basically, move forward with this as a priority, not just on Women's Day, not just lip service, but actually work towards as societies to make true impact. We know that a lot of Global South countries have better policies, targeted policies. A lot of programs are focused on women's enhancement of their roles. But still, the awareness even, sometimes I feel, I'll also mention that living in Beijing for over 10 years, I think a lot of people from more privileged settings cannot even imagine the challenges that women face professionally, domestically, when it comes to a lot of Global South countries. So I'm really glad that we're able to have these conversations. We have the technology, we have the platforms, we also have increasing resources to focus on this. So with that, I'll also quickly mention that for all the panelists, we have so many of you with so much experience, and we want to make the most of it, but there will be paucity of time. So please keep your interventions, share your experience when it comes to specifically, how is your work impacting women? How is it impacting gender equality? What can you as decision makers in your field do, and what further can be done? This obviously includes the challenges you face as well. And then, you can also mention a little bit about what can further be done to maybe concretize solutions, create more synergy across platforms and across Global South countries. And if it's within 6 to 7 minutes, then we can make sure that we can get maximum from all of the speakers over here. So without further ado, I will now welcome our first speaker of today's panel, which is Dr. Alice Evans. Dr. Alice Evans is a visiting associate professor at Stanford University, and she's also the author of the book, The Great Gender Divergence, and How and Why the Entire World has become more gender equal and why some societies are more than others. So Dr. Alice, please, we welcome your intervention to learn more about your work, your research, and what this book talks about. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zoon. Thank you. So it's so fascinating that you mentioned Beijing, right? So let's take East Asia and South Asia, because back in 1900, these two world regions were both extremely patriarchal with strong son bias. They were patrilineal, that sons stayed with their parents, they inherited land, looked after their parents, right? Men were revered as masters in both of these regions. Yet since right across East Asia, in all my fieldwork in Korea and Japan and China, you see over the 20th century, soaring female employment. And now if you go into the big cities in China, it's normal to see young women out and about in their streets, living their lives, being very independent, having phenomenal safety. So why don't we see that in Karachi and Lahore, right? Why do we see young women out with their little dogs doing whatever they want? What is going on, and what's missing out in Lahore? And how can women in Lahore gain those same freedoms, right? To live their life and go out as they please. So I think obviously the first and most important difference is that East Asia has had rapid economic growth. So when those factories opened up, there was so much demand for jobs that the factory recruiters were so desperate they went to the Chinese fathers, give me your daughters. We need workers. And the fathers were, they were desperate for money. So they're like, okay, here, take our daughters. But the other bit, and that was so important, because even though East Asia was patriarchal and girls were remitting money home often to support their brothers, that increased their mobility into the public sphere. It became so acceptable, right? So when I was in, little villages in Bihar in India, I would go and say, has any woman ever left this village to go for work? And they'd say no. And if no women go, then you don't want to be the first to let your daughter go, because then everyone will talk about, oh, what was she up to in Delhi? Oh, she was up to no good, right? So you need that big labor demand so that all the women go, so it becomes totally normal, totally acceptable. No one is raising any questions. The second most important difference is that South Asians tend to put a higher premium on female seclusion, right? So in Urdu, people might say a woman belongs behind four walls and a veil, right? And so that stronger emphasis on female seclusion, on men gaining their respect by keeping their wives at home, means that often in South Asia, women are less responsive to economic opportunities. So, for example, my colleague at Stanford, Suhani Jalotta, she did a wonderful randomized control trial in Mumbai. And they offer slum-dwelling women the opportunity to get a job in a nice office with other women, and there's childcare. And 60% of the women say yes, but then they go back and they talk to their husbands, and their husbands say no, and basically most of the women stay at home. So, and this is so consistent. When I was in Rajasthan, when we were in groups, it was so often for women to pull the dupatta over their faces, right? So if you've got this really strong idea that women should not be seen by non-mehram men, that women should not be seen by male outsiders, then even if jobs do open up, female labor supply is so much less responsive. And I think that helps explain the previous opening remarks that female employment is so low across South Asia, especially in northern India, especially in Pakistan. So what can we learn from these two regions, right? I think that one of the key things, actually what's fascinating, if I may, just in a final minute, say let's learn from Saudi Arabia, right? So Saudi Arabia also has this strong idea of female seclusion. But what MBS has tried to do is encourage women into the public sphere by reducing men's concerns about stigma and shame. So MBS has broadcast so many films and TV shows showing royal women in the public sphere, showing that it is totally acceptable for women to go out and there will be no loss of honor. And I think it's overcoming those collective action problems, overcoming men's concerns about stigma so that it becomes perfectly acceptable. So I think if we recognize that the core issue is female seclusion and male honor, but this can be overcome with these collective action interventions, then that would be a path forward towards greater visibility so that in towns right across North India and Pakistan, we see more women enjoying their lives, just like in Bangkok and Beijing rather. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Alice. Honestly, I mean, I'll give a bit of my own experience quickly, because this intervention is so important and your analysis is spot on. In China, people talk about how at the beginning, when the country was formed, right? This quote by Chairman Mao, that women hold up half the sky. So even before economic opportunity, that emphasis on women of a feudal society where there was seclusion, for the leadership to actively say that no, it should be different. Women are partners, participants. I think that messaging is so important. And I have myself seen how a lot of families within small cities in Pakistan as well, they want their daughters to work. They want their daughters to be more independent, but they just do not feel safe. And maybe if they go to an East Asian country or China, they would do otherwise. So the messaging from government officials to set the example, to make it more normal, is crucial for us to move forward in a broader sense as a society. So thank you. Thank you for that. And I hope that, as we learn more from the other speakers, we can also make such comparisons. What are targeted efforts that can be made to change our current reality? Now let's warmly welcome Atinuke Adebanji, who is a professor of statistics, and her research is about applied multivariate methods, statistical modeling of public health outcomes. And you've also employed multidisciplinary approaches. You focus on women's health as well. So from your perspective, what are the core challenges that you have personally faced, and how is, increasing participation of women as researchers, as agenda setters in this field, making an impact, and what can other Global South countries learn from your experience? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting me, Lubna. Thank you. I don't have much experience in South Asia, and I thank you so much for the opportunity for learning a bit about South Asia from Alice. I want to speak to what I have done in Ghana and what we realized we could do in Ghana. I think sometimes we focus so much on what the establishments can do for us. So what we did in my former university when I was in Ghana is a group of women, just 5 of us, we came together to start the Women in STEM Ghana. And through the Women in STEM Ghana, it has now become a national network of women in sciences, or women in STEM, science, tech, engineering, and mathematics. And one other thing that we do is we deliberately created a mentoring platform so that we could identify women in the early stages of their career in sciences, and then mentor them, create opportunities for them to make sure organize the summer camps for girls in STEM. And this we're doing every year. We bring girls from senior high schools, and we made sure that at least 70% of these girls were from rural settings, colleges, secondary schools in rural settings, and bring them to the university. And then we'll get funding, and they will be there for 1 week. And then what we did is they don't come alone, they come with their teachers, especially the female teachers. So we had the program for the female science teachers as well as these girls. So it's become a national thing now in Ghana for the girls' camp. I think those are some of the things that we can do at our own level as individuals and within our own networks without necessarily relying so much on what the organizations or the establishments can do for us. We might not be able to change policy in 1 day or 2 or 1 year or 2, but I always say, what can you do as an individual? So besides that, we also pledge to ourselves that we, as women in sciences, we will always have our own network of mentees, so that you have a cohort of mentees, you see them through, like your former student as an undergrad becomes your colleague in the university. I have quite a number of them now. I have some of my students who are now professors too. So when you do that, what you have to make sure is that they reproduce themselves. I always say, make sure you replicate, give back. When you give, you get. Right. So I think this is what I want to suggest that we can do. That you don't necessarily have to look at government policies and institutional changes. You can make that change. So what can you do as a small group, a niche of friends, and then make a change that you can? That's what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll quickly, mention, because, in China, we also have a lot of studies to promote South-South cooperation. So I've been part of a program which was called Triangular for Study for Poverty Alleviation. One village in China, one village in an African country, and one village in another global south country. And that was, like you said, you can share Ghana's experience, and that is absolutely replicable in Pakistan, in India, in Nepal, in other parts of the world that need this kind of affirmative action. So thank you for sharing, and I completely agree. I think in any situation you're in, for example, if I host a lot of events, discussions, and I make sure that we have women participation. We don't have manuals, and the conversation is gender sensitive, gender responsive. So no matter what field you're in, you can make that impact, and having mentees making a difference in people's lives, that is also changing mindsets in those villages. So maybe they will be more likely to send their daughters to pursue their dreams and to be independent. So thank you so much. Now let's loop in Miss Ambreen Iftikhar, who is Director of Pakistan's Single Window. And she is a career civil servant who is serving as the Additional Secretary, Executive Director General at the Board of Investment. And you have a lot of diverse experience. You've also worked in areas and force systems on risk management, trade facilitation, automation, and compliance management. I'd like to ask you, as a civil servant in Pakistan, what has your experience been? How gender sensitive is your own work surrounding? And what can you currently be doing to make sure that more women can benefit from opportunities and more women can, move forward in a positive way? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zoon. It's a pleasure to be part of this discussion. So in my over 33 years of experience as a civil servant working for the government, one thing that I have learned through my experience is the need for women coming together and forming collaborative networks which allow them the independence and the autonomy to make decisions and to have their voices heard. And the reason why I emphasize on the creation of autonomous networks, there are many reasons, but I will list the three most important ones that I think have sort of driven the narrative and the situation that we are in on the Gender Equality Index. The first reason, and I'm speaking, of course, of my own country, is that I see that there is clearly an underrepresentation of women leadership, of qualified women at the higher echelons. We don't have enough women leaders from various strata of society that are represented at the highest tiers of decision making. And that is one of the main reasons that we are not able to create the kind of impact that needs to be created. The second reason is that in the Global South, many government organizations operate within certain political frameworks. And these political frameworks prioritize male-dominated networks and male-generated narratives. And that is one of the reasons that women, many a times, are sidelined and their opinions are not able to come through. And the third reason is the fragmentation of expertise, because we have a lot of qualified women with expertise in various sectors. Unfortunately, I don't see enough platforms which can allow for that cohesive, collaborative accumulation of a knowledge base through which women can speak with each other and learn from each other and, have that collaborative kind of impactful voice. So these are the three main reasons that I feel need to be addressed. And I've also seen this through my own work, and that is why I feel that, the lady, the speaker before me from Ghana, I think I totally and completely agree with her that we do not need to depend only on the government or on, the mighty international development partners through which we have been seeking aid, many countries in the global south. We need to start looking at small groups and how we can collaborate together and start making a difference. I believe in the power of small initiatives. And if we can develop an ecosystem, the analogy I would give is that of a mighty river which is fed through different streams. And these streams are those small initiatives that feed into that, river of knowledge and innovative solutions. And all of us start speaking to each other. What the lady is talking about, what she's done in Ghana, as you also said, can definitely be replicated in so many other countries. So I would stress upon the need to create such a cohesive ecosystem through these small stories that we can share with each other and collaborate to start making more of an impact and not depend only on the upper echelons and upper tiers of leadership. I think we all need to be leaders in our own right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ms. Ambreen. And I resonate so much with what you've said, because I feel that a lot of professions, there are networks of men and there are these stereotypes about women. And even, I was a young professional, maybe 10, 15 years ago when I had just graduated, and it was very normal to say that, okay, a woman boss is just not going to support you. And women will, pull each other down. And I think all of that, these myths have been again and again and again. And because of this, even competent women, they face so many challenges that maybe they're not able to perform the way they could. So the creation of obviously, within your individual capacity, there can be creation a support system that is not going to allow women to be sidelined, their voices to be more at the center. And I think additionally, I think that increasingly also Pakistani media, like Dr. Alice mentioned, media, or films or dramas, I mean, they need to also increasingly focus on women-centered characters and to showcase in different ways, whether it's government officials or people who are creating cinema, if they have, this consciousness about women-centered roles. I think that can also gradually trickle down and normalize things. And I think exactly in every field you can make a difference. So thank you for that intervention. And let's hope we can have more exchanges between Ghana, Pakistan, other global South countries to replicate such impactful examples. We don't need something massive. We need a change from within. And that's going to be more lasting and a deeper change. So now let's welcome Professor Lorretta Favour Chizomam, who is an expert on sociology and demography. You have over 100 publications, and you have focused a lot. Is Professor Lorretta with us right now?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, great. Okay, so you have focused a lot on, obviously you've taught, you have over 100 publications, you have focused on sexual and reproductive health. So please share more about your work and the kind of impact it's making. And I think also, if you can share over the course of your career, what has changed for the better, and maybe if there are new challenges that are emerging. Thank you.
Thank you. I wish I could share my slides like I told you, but I will gladly share it. I will gladly share it after the meeting. Thank you so much for inviting me. I joined the academic career in 2012 and have served in various capacities as the head of department, deputy dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Director of General Studies, and I have also led research teams. To a large extent, the university system in my country, Nigeria, and the entire research ecosystem operates what I may call an equitable gender unbiased system. This is because men and women get to be assessed using the same yardstick. There is usually no partiality on the basis of gender when it comes to assessment. And I have also seen a growing number of female professors in my country. And in many cases, in many occasions, matters are resolved based on reasoned consensus, not that a man said it or a woman said it. And I have been privileged to serve in the editorial board of many journals in my country and outside of my country. As one of the editors of African Journal of Reproductive Health, a leading journal in reproductive health in Africa, and indeed the Global South. Recently, we expanded our scope to cover countries in the Global South, and we have published a number of articles from the Global South countries. We observe the growth in the percentage of female first authors. In 2020, it was 41%, and currently we have 56.7%, meaning that more and more women are participating in research. More and more women are getting active in the research space. And indeed, the impact of women is also growing, although we are still underrepresented in the research and policy space. Now, I took a look at the Elsevier's Gender and Diversity in Research report, the latest one, 2024. It shows that women's representation in research is actually increasing from 29% in 2002 to 41% in 2024. This is an impressive growth, I would say. We are at the parity zone, but we are not yet there. And variation continues across disciplines. Women are seriously underrepresented in all disciplines except nursing, psychology, immunology and microbiology, and neuroscience. And at the country level, the variation is also another thing of concern. Except South Africa in the Global South, all the countries where women representation in research is above that global average of 41%, they are all in the Global North. Only South Africa in the Global South. Gender bias persists, unfortunately, in many subtle and obvious ways. And from my own experience in my university and other universities that I've been privileged to serve in, I see that there seems to be an unwritten norm where men are usually considered first in appointments before women. And I see a number of younger female academics still struggle to cope with work-life balance, which affects productivity, we know. And in the area of research grants, we still lag very much behind the men. And we know the value of research grants. When you have grants, then your capacity to conduct impactful research expands, your visibility expands because you now have money to publish in open access journals. But the proportion of research grant awardees that are female is quite low. Although it has increased from 29% in 2009 to 37% in 2022, but again, the largest increases took place in the Global North, not the Global South. In 2022, women featured as authors in 35% of scientific publications in Scopus. This is a 12% point increase from that period, within the period, about 2 decades. And it is also, it may also be notable to hear that publications by men are still more cited, meaning more impact by male, and we still lag behind. I mean, women still lag behind in research innovation and patent output. However, there is something going for us, women. Existing current evidence shows that women engage more in multidisciplinary research than men. I think this is something we can leverage. We can leverage this to form stronger cross-country cross-disciplinary teams in the Global South to brainstorm, apply for research grants together, and also publish together. Unfortunately, like I said earlier, gender bias still exists. It still remains a huge reality. We must strive to challenge it and address it. And something else, this is closely related to what some of my colleagues have said earlier. I would suggest that we continue to identify, encourage, and mentor younger women who have the potential to make impacts in their research career. This is something I have been doing over time. We need to encourage them to liberate their mentality from the traditional gender roles and expectations that limit many women. And finally, I want to say that we need to push for platforms to work with women in parliaments to facilitate the translation of our research as women to policy and programs. Although the share of seats in parliament currently held by women is still low, indeed it remains low across almost all the regions in the world. But we can leverage that. We can leverage that little we have to give more in the research space in order to make more gain. Thank you so much. I would like to stop here this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I mean, honestly, the data you're sharing, the change that's been made, and also the targeted efforts that I think the example of mentorable women is so important, because as you were talking about the data and also mentioned Ms. Ambreen's intervention, it's also about the confidence of women. We know that women with the same skill set, with the same capabilities will be very underconfident, keep second guessing themselves. And I do not think that is genetic or that's how women are meant to be. It's because of society that maybe questions them. So with mentoring programs, with increasing participation of women, I think we can also change that characteristic, which is so closely associated with young girls and women that they just think they're underconfident. Like when you said about research grants, I think many women also wouldn't be applying for these grants because they just might think they won't be capable enough. So we need them to be more confident. And personally, mentoring young women is a very important way to move forward. Let's hope we see more change. And I think we need to, as I earlier mentioned, if we move away from lip service with more representation of women, we need to make sure that they are making an impact so that people see the ground results and how that can maybe transform villages, rural areas, certain fields, etc. So if it's lip service, you will not see the impact and there will be a misdiagnosis. But if it is not lip service, then we will see, the society can see the impact of women's participation and representation. With this, let's welcome Executive Director for the Center for Policy Dialogue, Dr. Fahmida Khatun, who has a lot of experience as an economist. She has served as an officer and also a consultant for many international organizations, including obviously the United Nations Development Program. She also has a PhD in economics and has done a lot of gender-focused research and practical work. So Dr. Fahmida, your thoughts on the reality today, your experience, what has changed, what needs to change, what are the challenges? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Zoon. And I would also like to thank the organizers for inviting me to this discussion. This is a really timely and important discussion. Much has been said by the previous speakers, and they have really very elaborately discussed the problems of and the challenges of female professionals in various fields. So I will focus on my research area. Basically, I'm a researcher, so while doing research and policy analysis, what are my experiences? And I will be very brief also. I understand that time is limited. So let me begin by saying that working as a woman in research and policy has been both deeply rewarding and occasionally challenging for me. Because policy research is a field where ideas influence decisions and shape national debates. And my organization, where I have been working for over 2 decades that the Center for Policy Dialogue has been working on for over 30 years in the country in policy analysis and policy advocacy in economic issues mainly. So being part of that has been a privilege. But at the same time, we have to also recognize that that this research space and policy analysis space has been traditionally male dominated, which is very obvious here in Bangladesh as well, especially areas such as economic and public policy. So over the years, I have learned that women's voices in policy discussions are not simply important for representation, but they should be, and they are essential for better policy making. So in my own professional journey, I have had the opportunity to work on issues including macroeconomic policy, trade and investment policy, the financial sector, and of course, women's issues and social issues as well. So my work is basically analysis, but one of the most fulfilling aspects of this work has been to see how evidence-based research can influence policy making, be it recommendations for improving tax-GDP ratio, for example, or making allocative priorities on social sectors, or even recognizing women's unpaid work. All of these, and many of the recommendations have been reflected in the policies. Of course, one cannot take the credit, all the credit for those. It is a culmination and combination of work by many organizations. So attribution is equally important for all the organizations who have been working on this. But in case of the challenges, I would also echo some of the issues which have been highlighted by the previous speakers. That one is that women researchers often face a particular challenge, that is visibility. So many women who are working in research and analysis, even if they produce strong research, they're sometimes less visible in the policy consultations or in public debates. So this means that the policy conversations may miss important perspectives from many bright and serious researchers, female researchers. So the barriers here are quite clear. So firstly, the visibility and recognition. So women are still underrepresented in panels, I see, advisory bodies, public policy discussions. In here in my own country, whenever there are policy discussions, I hardly see any women in the panel. And unfortunately, when you ask or when you try to inquire, and the common answer you would get is that, oh, there are not many women there. Actually, they don't want to also, do the hard work to find out where they are. I mean, it's not always everybody would be visible, but those who are working behind the scene and publishing, so that is not often, visible, and they are unrecognized. And that's why we see that women are really underrepresented in discussions. The second issue is, of course, the leadership opportunities. It is applicable to all other professions. So the leadership opportunities in case of women in researchers. So while many women work in research institutions, but we see that fewer women are in the senior leadership positions where the major decisions are made. So behind these, there are socioeconomic, cultural, religious issues. I wouldn't go into those discussions, the reasons for that. We have little time. But the third challenge I want to also recognize is that balancing professional and social expectations. We heard from previous speakers, and in the beginning, Mr. Akbar Zaidi also mentioned that in many societies, particularly in the global south, women still carry disproportionate share of caregiving responsibilities, which are unpaid. So this role limits the time and flexibility needed to pursue demanding research careers. And in research, actually, it's like there's no time for it. Research is like a 24-hour job, and in many other jobs also. And in research, you have to, publication is one important criteria for your career advancement, what is called like publish or perish. So in that situation, but women are constrained due to their diversified responsibilities, both within the household and outside, of course, as a professional. So that's why there is a lot of changes needed, particularly the institutional changes are needed. Organizations need to ensure that women are represented in decision-making roles and in leadership positions. And also there should be improvement in the work environments which can support the balance, work-life balance. Of course, work-life balance is also important, equally important for men, that I recognize. And in all other professions. So flexible policies and supportive working environment and working culture, that can be very useful. And equally important is ensuring that women experts are visible in public policy debates. Women careerists, even researchers themselves can help them, take them forward. And there comes the issue of mentorship and network that play a very important role in career development. So for young women researchers, having role models can be incredibly important. Mentors can provide guidance, encouragement, and confidence. And professional networks are also very powerful. It's equally powerful as mentorship and networks. Because these networks can create opportunities for collaboration and also enable women to support one another in case of professional development and in case of navigating professional challenges. In the lessons from Global South has been shared. In case of Bangladesh also, that those are equally relevant. Strengthening women's leadership requires sustained investment. One of the reasons for women, less women in higher positions or decision-making positions, roles also, that the investment in education and skills, it's less. In Bangladesh, women's participation, the share of women's labor force participation is about 38%, which is low compared to men. But again, the irony is that within that 38%, over 90% work in the informal sector, which has less income, less job security, and all this. So that's why a sustained investment in education, capacity building, and institutional inclusion is very, very important. And and finally, I would like to end by saying that women's leadership is not just a gender issue. It is a development issue, actually. And empowering women in research and policymaking is also not just about fairness. It is about improving the quality of decisions that shape our societies. So when women lead, policies become more inclusive. And when women are heard, institutions become more responsive. And when women participate fully, so that societies become stronger. So the future of policymaking must be therefore be inclusive, more representative, and more diverse, because the development cannot be sustainable if half of the population is underrepresented in shaping this. With this, I would like to end. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I think you mentioned so many important points, and I'll quickly mention one of them, which is unpaid labor and caregiving. the expectation that women need to, I mean, the work-life balance for women is very different than what it looks like for most men, especially if I talk about South Asia, many other developing countries. And I'll also mention that this has to be an effort on the country level. In China, for example, there was a report recently published that talked about the percentage of household chores done by men, and they compared over the years. And they want to increase that percentage, because when women are expected to single-handedly manage the household, birth rates obviously will not increase, but also women will not prosper, and that has a huge impact on the economy. And I think this should be a parallel conversation in our countries where we want women to participate in the workforce, but they don't see that leading too much, because they will not get that support back home. So very, very important point among many others. Moving forward, let's welcome Dr. Nausheen H, who is a specialist in cities and climate change with a strong focus on extreme heat impacts. Dr. Nausheen, especially, Pakistan has been on the receiving end of climate change in recent years, and the Global South as a collective is disproportionately effective, even though we were not the ones creating this reality we are facing, right? So can you talk a bit about your research of vulnerability, climate change impacts, which communities are the worst affected, and what is currently being done?
Thank you so much, Zoon. I would like to start off first by thanking the organizers of this wonderful forum who brought us together, and I hope I'm audible. And
yes.
Also thanks to my colleague, Dr. Lubna Naz, and also to Dr. Akbar Zaidi. I'm very much ensconced in research and policy here at IBA, where I have been working for almost 20 years now. And I run a little research lab called the Karachi Urban Lab, just a few of us who've come together over the last few years, since 2016, to work on various different aspects of urbanization, urban development. We started off essentially looking at the dynamics of evictions and displacement and urban renewal, using Karachi as a proxy to think about a host of different kinds of dynamics, both local, regional, and global. And now our work has dovetailed more and more with climate change related issues by default, because Pakistan is very much at the center, as much of South Asia, and especially much of sub-Saharan Africa, when it comes to issues of extreme heat, and more broadly speaking, compounding extreme events, not just extreme heat, but also how these dynamics also relate to extreme precipitation and so forth. So at the Karachi Urban Lab, we work with a host of different communities. You would call them vulnerable, you would call them poor, you would call them communities or families or individuals living in low income or informal settlements, not only in Karachi, but we have a project running now across Sindh in the broader cities in the secondary cities of Jacobabad and Larkana. Jacobabad especially is a poster child for one of the hottest cities on this planet, where the ambient temperature exceeds 51 Celsius. And over there, we are working with climate scientists over at King's College London to look at what it means to live at the outer limits of adaptation, essentially, and bringing on board physiologists, epidemiologists, and so forth. So we work on the basis of external funding, which is trying to secure international grants, an arena in which we have been exceedingly successful over the last decade and a half, but now are sort of running up against a hard-hitting wall as the funding climate has changed dramatically in the global north. In the United States, where it is largely devoid of any hope, and in the United Kingdom, where we are seeing 40% cuts in FCDO funding. And in the broader context of South Asia, I'm not sure how our colleagues over in Bangladesh and Nepal and other countries are faring, but this has put us in a tremendously competitive and a very cutthroat environment now in terms of securing funds and across foundations like the Wellcome Trust, United Kingdom Research Innovation, and so forth, in securing grants to fund projects that are increasingly important on climate change related issues. And alongside this, we are also witnessing actually what is the withdrawal of institutions within the United Kingdom and the United States in their commitments to climate change, not only in terms of policy-making agendas, but also funding scenarios. So it's going to be interesting to see how development funds get impacted and how this in turn impacts academic funding within universities in countries like Pakistan. So my experience as a woman policy researcher has been trying to sort of navigate the changing frontiers of this broader terrain vis-a-vis how we get funds, where we secure them, and how this entire environment is actually becoming sort of more cutthroat and more difficult to navigate. And where you stand as a woman academic and policy researcher coming from the Global South makes a huge difference. So what I am seeing, and I am just giving you anecdotal evidence because this is something that we haven't thought about, is that there are foundations and institutions out there in the UK and elsewhere who are committing small amounts of funds to climate change research and are saying that we wish to support women in the Global South to lead these kinds of research. But the evidence is showing otherwise. Now, these are the beginnings of what I call a new frontier. And alongside this, sort of seeing more and more money going towards wars. So this is, these are new dilemmas, new challenges that we are now confronting in the development field overall. And this is going to have an impact in terms of where we stand as women or female policy researchers and the privileges that we have enjoyed. I have enjoyed to a large extent also because of my class background, because of my social capital, and because of the institution that I work. IBA is one of the leading organizations in Pakistan. It has had an incredibly supportive culture for research and for female professors such as myself to find the kind of support that is necessary to make our research happen, to take on board mentoring, capacity building, for younger women at KUL. We have mentored dozens and dozens of young female researchers representing diverse ethnic and religious backgrounds, some of whom are now have gone onwards to do their PhDs in the Global North and master's programs. But all of this is only possible if you have the funds. So mentoring and capacity building is also about money. And let me make it really, really clear that as we come together to celebrate International Women's Day, we mustn't forget that all our achievements are also fed by money. And without money, we cannot make things happen, especially when it comes to research, policy development within universities, and even making these kinds of forums transform into something radical and something long-term. So I would just like to end on this note, and I am seeing a very, 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 very pessimistic scenario ahead of me when it comes to how money is flowing and where it's going to come from and where it's going to go, whether we're looking at international global budgets or national budgets or how universities are getting funded. So, so I will leave you all with this thought that how are we going to make money come into the institutions that we belong to, where we can continue building the kinds of cultures of support that and capacity building and mentoring that are needed to make a younger generation of female researchers thrive and shine, whether it is at institutions like IBA or beyond, because without money, we cannot make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Dr. Nausheen, your intervention is about the challenges, but as an international relations scholar myself, it's also about a changing global order. And if I have to answer in one word where the money is increasingly going to come from, I think it would be Beijing. It would be China. That is, increasingly taking an interest in a different way. Now, those institutions that Pakistan and other South Asian and developing countries have worked with were obviously, linked with the global north. And that has been, in many ways, a successful model. It has financed the impact that we've seen. Like you said, we have to be pragmatic. And I think increasingly what I predict is that researchers, professionals will see how they can also understand the Chinese funding, those resources, those solutions. And, in 2019, I worked on a research with scholars from the Netherlands. And we were talking about, actually, this is a great opportunity for Europe, China, and the Global South to work together, because Europe had the experience of being ingrained, embedded in the communities, having those links with researchers, with the experts. And China wants to increasingly be able to do that, but in a slightly different way. So let's hope the resources, come. We are seeing a changing world. And I think it's going to be professionals like all of you on the front lines that will have to navigate and see, okay, what are the changes we can make to be able to work with a shifting global reality and a different way of solutions. And I hope you get to visit as well soon. I mean, there's a lot of interesting work happening in that part of the world as well. So thank you. Now let's welcome Ms. Sabnam Shivakoti, who is Chief Joint Secretary, Agriculture Information and Training Center at the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development for the Government of Nepal. Ms. Sabnam, you have done a lot of impactful work. I can see from your profile. And here we are, we would like to learn more from you about, in your field, in your experience, what are the unique challenges, opportunities, and changing realities, and what that means for women. Thank you. You're muted, I think. Yeah. I'm not sure. Can anyone else hear Miss Sabnam?
No, I can't hear her.
Okay.
She's not audible.
Yeah, you're not audible right now. Okay. Can you try to unmute yourself? If there is a slight technical issue, okay, let's wait a minute. And otherwise, I can bring in the next speaker and come back to you after one more speaker. Okay, thank you. Thank you for understanding. Now let's welcome Ms. Helani Galpaya, who is CEO of LIRNEasia, and you've worked on, pro-poor, pro-market. You're working for a pro-poor, market think tank, and this is all about, digital access, human rights. So from you, Ms. Helani, can you talk a bit about your current work, how it's making an impact? What are the challenges that in India you're facing, and how can other such initiatives make more impact as well?
Thank you, Zoon. For clarity, LIRNEasia is a think tank that works in 22 countries in South Asia and Southeast Asia. I'm not based in India. It's registered in Sri Lanka, so I need to make that very clear in my bio.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
All right. So in digital, is an area where the region as a whole, South and Southeast Asia, has made huge strides. We started with gender gaps of 65%, where a woman was less likely than a man by 65% to own a phone, to countries like Sri Lanka, where there's hardly a gender gap in access to digital technologies, to countries like Pakistan and Bangladesh, where there still is a gender gap, but it has lessened. Now, what the digital gender gap being reduced has done is it has increased opportunities for women to access information, for example, in maternal health in Bangladesh. It has also increased access to labor markets. Now, this has come with a really positive and negative kind of double-edged sword. So if you think about digital technologies, countries like Sri Lanka have almost equal university graduation rates, really high entry into IT-enabled sector workforces, right? So there's been sort of some equal level playing field happening when it comes to some of the high-end tech jobs. But if you look at some of the less well-paid platform jobs, like women on Upwork and WeWork doing gigs and ad clicking and designing little logos, there has been a huge increase in female participation, but the view of society has not changed much. So when we repeatedly talk in Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka to women and their families engaged in gig work, I like the fact that now my wife or my daughter can work from home because it allows her to earn income and contribute, but it also allows her to continue doing her care and housework because she's now working from home and it's not taking her away from the house. So it's this weird situation where women have now the extra burden of earning income, but they're also still not released from any of the care and reproductive work that they are essentially doing. And Sri Lanka, of course, is a weird one where, women's achievements in many things have equal to that of men, but we are far behind when it comes to participation in parliament. We have doubled our number of parliamentarians from 5% to 10%, but that's a little drop in the bucket. Everyone looks at a country like Sri Lanka because we've had 3 essentially heads of states or deputy heads of states in Sri Lanka. But still, we are at female labor force participation at 30%, just ahead of Pakistan, I think. So really nothing to pat ourselves on the back about. And when it comes to the real shocks that we are facing, like climate change or COVID, what we saw during COVID is women entering the workforce, doing work from home, trying to supplement the income, and men completely unable to figure out, oh, my job is gone, what do I do? So women have stepped in, but now, additional burden. And this industry that we work in, I mean, I consider we are a research think tank, very much an evidence-based research think tank, but we worry about, we are categorized into civil society. So we are sort of classified into the rights-based organizations as well. So straddling sort of these two sort of research and civil society kind of things, I see these interesting trends where in civil society, you see huge female leadership in many sectors. In social sciences and humanities research across the region, you go to a conference, you see a lot of female participation. But then when you talk about increasingly the quantified social science, so I have a large team of data scientists who are answering social science research questions with trillions of call detail records and Google Nightlights and electricity utility data. When I try to hire a data scientist, these are mostly men. So the more technical or STEM you get, they tend to be male. I ran an incredibly female-heavy organization where there were 2 men. And the moment I moved into data science in 2012 to answer the same research questions like where do people live and work, etc., suddenly the skew changed to men because all I could hire were men. And I think right now my data science team has 1 female. This also then brings me to the organizational responsibility as a research organization, even in social science. How do we ensure that the women get the same opportunities? We travel to rural Bihar, outside of Manila in the Philippines, rural Sri Lanka. There are safety concerns that women field researchers have that then it falls on me and the organization to ensure that they have the same opportunity to do that really cutting edge research by living for a week, for example, with the community, but that she's also ensured to be safe, for example, right? So you do need to put additional resources, and organizations that I talk to ensure that there's a long-term, let's say, support service and a driver who's like a parental figure who goes with them. Now, it would be very easy to not do any of that and assume that the female researcher can also go to the field, just like the male researcher, but that's not our lived reality, and we do need to have organizational support. We were one of the first in the country, way before COVID, made it normal to allow people to work from home. And the people who took up that offer, part-time work from home, were women with children. And the only reason they stayed in the labor force, these mid to senior researchers, was because they could work at home and work from home and have the flexibility to manage their care and reproductive care work from home and work part-time as well. Even when the law doesn't support part-time work, for example, we have to pay full-time pension benefits even when people work from home. So the law doesn't recognize this idea of working part-time. Yet we chose to take on that extra additional burden and do this. Now, coming to the individual that was sort of regional and organizational. I think all of us can identify probably, 10, 12 times, certainly for me early in my career, where because you're brown, because you're Asian, and because you're female, you tick 3 boxes in a panel. So you get really high profile speaking engagement. I know I certainly did. And you're expected to represent all of femalehood, all of South Asia, even though, me being from Sri Lanka, what can I talk about, Pakistan unless I have research? Luckily, I work in 22 countries. But my way of dealing with all of that is I had 2 choices, is to be highly offended that it was a bunch of other white men in the panel and me as the only person who ticked boxes, or to take the opportunity and say, you know what, I'm going to talk about actually the expertise that I do have and make sure my second invitation from this UN, body that has me on an opening panel is because of expertise as well as those other things that I tick the box on, right? And that's something that has worked very well. And I talked to a bunch of my junior colleagues actually yesterday, because my experience at my age is now very different from their experience of being a woman in research. And one of the things they said is the assumption that just, my economist was telling me, and she's a young woman, the number of people who come to me at conferences and say, oh, so in gender, in your research, what does whatever say? And she's not doing gender research. Sorry, she's doing macroeconomic policy or social welfare or something like that, right? But the assumption that we all need to have. So again, this idea that we need to represent, I think that's a wonderful thing, that we take our role as role models seriously, but women should also be allowed to just be individual women and experts in their own fields at the same time. So I'll end with sort of, I guess, you wanted recommendations. The number of times I'll get a call from an institution to say, I'm running a panel on X. Can you recommend a woman for this panel? And I say, oh, I've got a great woman. So let's say it's on insurance. I've got, the CEO of insurance company Y. They're like, oh, no, she does life insurance. We've got 2 people from life insurance. What we actually need is property and whatever insurance expertise, right? This is a ridiculous situation when perhaps in the insurance industry, CEOs are, let's say, 90% male. So my advice in all these events, panels, everything, is to start with the woman or 1 or 2 women who have the real expertise. Because if the men are 90%, you can find the other expertise to supplement this panel and put the woman at the center, build the panel around a woman, and then talk about men. Sit out of any panel and the male allies should sit out of any panel or event that there are no female speakers. And third, we should be thinking about the care and reproductive burden that women have when we run organizations, and particularly events. The number of times women cannot attend research conferences because they do not have childcare, or the conference doesn't have a childcare facility, are still really, really high. So we are expected to perform on a benchmark that men were able to perform, but that is because they did have that care burden. So we do need to really think about funders, and I want to cite like IDRC as one of the funders in Canada who really think about things like that and at least talk about possibly allocating some funding to support women who come for these events. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. There's so much you have talked about which is relatable and needs to be addressed. I mean, I think it's funny that even if we as brown women in a certain field are invited as a diversity addition, right? We can either choose to refuse that opportunity, or we can change people's perceptions about it. And I also completely agree with you. We have so many, like we say, manuals, even in this day and age, that it's absurd, firstly, that people think it's absolutely normal to have 10, 15, 20 just men talking about something. And why is the woman added right at the end? And maybe that woman would also not have the expertise. And you can find someone far more relevant and competent if you started with the woman. So I feel there's a lot that needs to be done in childcare, affordable childcare. This is a conversation that very advanced economies, East Asian countries also talking about. And I think with your experience in 22 countries, obviously Sri Lanka in terms of education and in many ways, gender equality is far ahead of other South Asian countries in some ways. But I think we do have similar societies, similar expectations within the family system. And I think there's a lot to learn from that. So thank you for sharing your experience. And let's hope we can gradually make an impact. Now, let's call Miss Manika Gupta, who is based in Delhi, if I'm correct. Yes. And she is a climate finance consultant for CPI. She is focused on developing innovative financing solutions to enable and catalyze the low carbon transition in India. A very important question, not just for India, but other South Asian countries as well. So let's learn more about your work and also the challenges you're facing and what solutions can we implement. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoon. It's truly an honor to be part of this panel. I'd like to talk about 2 things. One, my research work, and second, my own journey. So starting with my research work, I am working with Climate Policy Initiative in India, but I'm working on a project currently on climate action financing through women-focused enterprises in Nepal. And these enterprises are basically in agriculture and forestry sectors, which are most impacted by climate change, and also are the main source of livelihoods. As we see that in Nepal, there is large outmigration of men, and women are left behind for these agriculture or forest-based work, and then they are also the stewards for environmental protection. So, what we found through our field survey that women entrepreneurs, although we were trying to enable climate finance for them, but more than that, they need technical assistance such as business skill training or market linkages and overall capacity building for their businesses and to successfully grow. So again, one of the previous panelists also mentioned how market link. When I say market linkages, it means that are they able to access supplier networks, negotiate prices in male-dominated networks? So that is one thing that we are now trying to solve for and to provide assistance and support to these budding entrepreneurs in the most remote areas in Nepal, and who may not even be like maybe working in home-based businesses and may not be even have the exposure that they can expand, they can also make their businesses grow, and they don't know about such opportunities. So definitely finance is needed for that. And we are trying to build a kind of a project preparation facility, a mechanism in which finance will be provided, but finance from maybe multilateral banks or impact investors. But more than that, technical assistance will be provided through impaneled trainers who can understand the challenges or the barriers that these entrepreneurs are facing. So, given like what I just mentioned, that maybe women entrepreneurs don't even have that kind of knowledge or understanding about what they need and what opportunities lie, I would like to just shift the conversation to my own journey. And working in research and climate policy, I have realized that as women, we need to make consistent efforts to create opportunities for ourselves. And this often means stepping forward even before we feel completely ready, speaking up, making our ideas heard, negotiating for what we deserve, and building our networks deliberately, not hesitating on showcasing our work. So, over time, these small acts of visibility help build credibility and then open doors for us. At the same time, an enabling environment matters deeply. I think we need to move beyond representation towards real transformation. Like just counting numbers is not representation. It needs to show some impact, and towards it should be towards genuine structural change in institutions, policies, and leadership pathways for women. Having worked in the niche area of climate change at an international nonprofit like Climate Policy Initiative, I have been fortunate to see several women in leadership roles in my workplace, and including the global CEO, who's also a woman. That kind of representation also genuinely shifts culture, it shapes the conversations, I believe, and the priorities, the sense of what is possible. So it reminds us that enabling ecosystems can be built intentionally. Another aspect that I believe I want to talk about is, which is extremely important, is the mentorship part, and some of the previous panelists have definitely spoken about it. I would like to reiterate that as we grow our careers, we must consciously make space for younger women entering the field, being approachable, respectful, supportive, and generous, with opportunities that can go a long way in helping someone build confidence, like at the very basic level, and find their voice. I also believe that qualities which are often associated with women, such as empathy, collaboration, or emotional intelligence, and their ability to build inclusive teams, these are not just soft skills, but are increasingly, these are now recognized as essential strengths today, like leadership strengths today. So finally, this was my takeaway from this entire discussion today. And I think strengthening women's leadership is not just about breaking barriers individually. It is a collective, like it should be collectively done. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your experience. And I think, the starting point where a lot of men are leaving these communities which makes women the frontliners? And how do we, it's obviously a situation where they would not have expected themselves to be. They might not have had the skill set, but your organization, by investing in their skills, capacity building, using what could have been a disadvantageous situation as one that can be used to empower women. I think this is a great example. And I completely agree. Everyone here resonates. Mentorship, a positive approach. We as individuals and as organizations and as policymakers all need to collectively make a difference. Now let's welcome again Ms. Sabnam Shivakoti. Please, let's do a quick sound test.
Am I audible?
Perfect. Okay. Over to you. Looking forward to your thoughts based on your experience and what more can be done to make women more equal. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, June. Sorry for the technical glitch. Thank you very much again, organizers, for inviting me to this seminar. And it was very great to listen to all the speakers ahead of me. Many of us share the similar experience. So I'll be sharing experience from my experience from working in the government for almost 25 years now. So I've been with the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development for more than 25 years. And if I look back to where it started and where I'm now, I think a lot of positive changes happen in terms of the women's participation, be it in the economic sphere, in the political sphere, or in the civil service sphere. There have been some positive affirmative policy taken by the government. Of course, those affirmative policies were advocated by women and other underprivileged group or other part of the excluded society communities. So there has been a lot of positive affirmation in our various policies. So because of that, there has been significant number of politicians in our federal and local government. Similarly, the civil society also, if we look back at 2008, when there were only 9% of the civil servants were women. But if you compare it at 2025, 9% of women are the secretaries. That means that you can see the transformation there, just being the participants to the 99% at the secretary level. So that means quite significant increase in terms of the participation, presence in those spheres is very encouraging, I would say. While working in this, I'm working in this agriculture sector for a long time. We know that this is one of the very hard hit sector by the climate change, the food security, and other various challenges. So being in the policy space, working for those farmers, I think there's a very good opportunities for the women leaders to include the provisions where women farmers could be benefited with, be it in terms of the program activities where women farmers are targeted, their challenges, their issues are addressed through the policies, and also how they are represented in various committees in various agricultural, technical, and other kind of committees, also their representation. So that way we can really influence during those policy formulation processes. So this is one advantage, that when women are in the leadership, they will have those opportunities to really include those women farmers, to bring more women farmers, and for the benefit of their economic development. So that is one area that I can that has been my experience. But the challenges, I think that we all have faced the similar kind of challenges, be it in the policy side or in the research side. We face a similar kind of challenges, despite the knowledge, despite the expertise, despite this competence. But there's always a challenge. That one is the systematic challenge where you're often less heard by your male counterparts or your higher authorities. Sometimes even the same ideas has to be validated by another male counterpart, for it to be taken into account. Sometimes your work is not really appreciated. So these challenges are there. But because of those positive affirmation, now we can see that there are many women in the civil societies, be it in the agriculture ministries or in other ministries. Also, a lot of women are there. Based on, and many of them cannot really participate in some of those events or the international conferences or other take part in other activities. The regular activities is because of also the care and other dual role that they have to really carry forward. So in that sense, I think the enabling environment has to be provided by the working space. One good thing is that these government offices, in some part of the government offices, they have provided the daily care services in the premises so that the women officials, they can bring their child, put them in the daycare center and work for in the afternoon. So I think that these are some of the positive initiations that will really bring more women into the professional front, one. And then second is, of course, enhancing their competence and capabilities through the mentoring, through building their capacity, so that they come forward in terms of the leading some of the challenging tasks, so that and also because they can write in the journals, they make their publications. So for various these kind of professionalism, I think we need to also mentor the upcoming young women in the business. So I think that is one area where we can really work with, and we have also done that in terms of we initiated with a loose network among the women professionals in agriculture and science, but after that this informal network was now formalized, and many of the women are now part of that formal network. So through these networks we exchange the opportunities, the mentoring opportunities or any other opportunities. We share the successes, and then this is how we have a kind of coalition built among ourselves to facilitate this women. I think this is another area that we need to continue to bring more of them, and another would be, of course, I also have a similar experience of having this participation in those panels, because many at times, because you are represented there, because you need one woman in the participants. So this time in this also I completely agree with our previous speaker about how we can really make our meaningful participation there, not just as a woman in the panel. So I think in this area also we need to bring other women also into those panels to make the more women visible, more of their expertise are visible. So that is one area we can really help with, and another would be on advocating for their the opportunities, many a times, be the higher studies or the training or the workshop or the international, the team of the international negotiations. So many a times the women are not represented. So there should be a continuous push from the leadership at the higher level, if women are in there, maybe to bring in more of those women professionals into these kind of international arena as well. So and this is one area we really need to work on. And also there should be a deliberate effort by the institution itself to ensure their participation, to ensure their capacity building, which is very much limited, I would say, because sometimes unless you write, you make them the mandatory representation, they will not be represented there. So at times even that kind of intervention is also needed. So these are some of my submissions, and also because I also see that a lot of their women are there, but when we talk about the expert consultation, very few women are represented there. So how we as a women's network or a women's alliance also bring in more women experts into the picture, so that those kind of expertise are not limited to the main counterparts only. So I think these are some areas we really need to work on, and lastly, what I feel is that women themselves have to keep themselves, continuously push themselves, read more, prepare more, try to make yourself try to present yourself in the best position wherever you represent, be it in a small committee or be it in a conference or be in any kind of professional avenue. So you try to excel yourself also, try to bring in that competence, so that then your presence is really credible. So I think these are some of the submissions that I would like to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sabnam. I think you mentioned it's not only on an individual level. There is a cultural difference as well. Women are excluded, and the organization and institutions can play a very pivotal role. But especially your last point, I think we should take every opportunity, even if we know that we are a part of a panel or a committee, because as a diversity ad, in the end, put your best foot forward and change the stereotypes, change the perceptions, make space for more people. And as you mentioned, I think if we look at the last few decades, all South Asian countries have seen a positive impact, and every next generation feels more doors opening a better situation. And that's all being possible because of efforts being made by individuals, by institutions, and we need to continue that. So thank you very much. Now I will invite one of our hosts, Dr. Lubna Naz, who is a professor at the Department of Economics at IBA Karachi. Dr. Lubna does not require much of an introduction as one of the co-organizers, of course, but I'll quickly mention that, your own expertise include climate change, human capital, social security, and you have years of experience in this field, obviously as an academic in the practical front. So share thoughts on the topic and what are the barriers, what further can be done, what changes. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Noon, for taking me in this wonderful discussion, which is about women issues, which is about the barriers to women participation in the labor market. So I would like to sum up to what learned panelists have already contributed to this discussion. There are three things which I would like to contribute here. The first one is about the barriers to women participation in the labor market. So if you look at the labor market situation, wherever in this global south, whether it is Nigeria or Ghana or Pakistan or Sri Lanka or India, you would see that this is happening systematically. So these barriers are no more random barriers. These are systematic barriers. And if we talk about the systematic barriers, there are three which are very much important. The first one is the transport availability, the commutation, how women commute to their jobs. This is something which is already obvious, which has been researched, which women are facing, but what has been done? This is important. The second is the caregiving facilities. So if you look at the low-income countries, in low-income countries, there is only 1% caregiving framework we have. So we find this thing very challenging for women, especially those women who are aspiring to come to labor market, who are aspiring to join the labor market, that they don't have caregiving facilities available at the workplace. And here I find the dilemma, as someone from the Bangladesh pointed out, it was Fahmida Khatun, I think. She pointed out that there are 36% women are already participating in the labor market, but 90% of them are in the informal labor market. And when we, just imagine about the informal labor market, it is the one where women don't have access to caregiving facilities. So it means that women this is something which is challenging. We consider it as a challenge, but when we find women, we find most of the women without such facilities. So isn't it this dilemma? We need to think over it, that what is something beyond that caregiving responsibilities, which is preventing women to participate more and more in the labor market. And another thing which I would like to point out here is the access to capital. So if you see that, that it is universal, the ability to start the business, there is no legal restriction to start business for women anywhere in the world. But when it comes to the access of capital, this is where the women face I would say the gender biasness. There the women face, questions which are not asked from the men. And this is where the women needs training, capacity building, as Manika has rightly pointed out, to get into the labor market. So this is something which is important to work on, to look from the policy perspective. And another important thing is the women networks, I would say. We don't have women networks in research. We don't have them in the policy. So, and as the Lorretta pointed out very well, that the women usually publish research in journals which are not cited. And the reason is that they publish in journals, they publish articles which are more close to the socioeconomic issues, and they don't have good networks. And you know that in the universities and the institutions, especially the higher educational institutions, the women are promoted based on the citations, based on the publications they have. And for that reasons, they lag behind their male counterparts. So there is a need to develop such networks at the academia which can help women to promote their research and get cited well. And one important thing which I would like to add to what the Dr. Akbar Zaidi has mentioned, that there is active silencing by the men. The men want to silence women in policies, in research, in wherever the women voice should be heard. But don't we think about the adaptive silence? We have accustomed to adaptive silence ourselves. Why women do not raise their voice to the cultural, I would say, discrimination they face. Why women don't raise their voice, especially the learned women, the educated women, they have adapted to discrimination. They don't raise their voice because of the fear that what people would say. They don't join networks which help them to raise their voice against the injustices. So if this keeps on happening in countries where we already have a low percentage of women being educated, having their role played in the market, and they have access to economic opportunities. So if such women don't come forward and break these social and cultural barriers, what we can expect of the women who are poor, who don't have access to such facilities, who don't have access to economic opportunities. So with that, I would end up here, and I would say that we need to bring more women in the labor market, but we have to create the enabling environment. And to create that enabling environment, we have already found so many things, so many, I would say, points raised by our learned speakers. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for that intervention. I mean, obviously, there are multiple fronts on which we need to acknowledge, and we should not get used to become numb to gender blindness, right? I think this is a very, very important first step. Now let's invite Dr. Yasmeen Sabeeh Qazi, who is CEO of QZ Catalyst, and you have been a senior country advisor for both the Gates Foundation and Packet Foundation, overseen $100 million worth of grants. Can you share more about your experience on, girls and women healthcare, and what can we learn from it? What can we do better? Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it has been such a pleasure. I had to join late because I was leading another webinar. So I'm a public health specialist, I'm a medical doctor, and I've been working in the field of sexual reproductive health and rights for more than 25 years. And it's been an experience that I bring in with whatever stream of work that I do. But I've been hearing all the panelists before me, and I don't want to repeat, but I have to underscore the point about the inclusivity and that, how do we ensure that there are real inclusion of women in the work that we do? Because sometimes it's like ticking that, check boxes. Because people do try to bring in, former team, whether it's a research team or it's a team of practitioners, but it's usually about how do we keep that balance without really making them a part of the work that they're doing. So I think the real challenge that we see in Pakistan, I'm sure in the region, is that it's about women has to work twice as much than men to prove their credibility. So even if they have to, ascend to the ladder or be in a decision-making process, it seems like a much longer route to them, except for, exceptional women, the women who have the opportunity, and women who have been able to do that successfully. So I think as a woman ourselves, we need to have that support network where we are able to, encourage and support other women, the mid-careers and other who are starting, that how can they be supported? Because one of the things when I started almost 25, 28 years back as a young professional, I would just see, and since I'm a medical doctor in the health, that if I go to the health ministry and I'm talking to policymakers, and we are talking of pregnancy, abortion, and all those things that are so women, of course, it's women specific. And I'm sitting in a room where all the policymakers and decision makers are men, because health ministry is largely dominated by the men. And, of course, they are technically, they may be sound, but I think that kind of a, imbalance and that kind of, not that understanding and compassion does matter. So I think one of the things that I've been able to do, and that has, given me thanks to Allah, that has given me that title of that I'm one of the sector leaders, is really try to bring, especially the women, but of course, the champions together. So if we need to work, how can we do it collectively and how can we have that inclusivity? And that research is not limited to the research, it converts into the policy action. So I think one of the biggest achievement that I've been able to do, being part of the research, but then also ensuring that it converts into a policy action. And then, of course, we see that action being implemented. So it's a full cycle. It's not about one or another, but how do you have that continuum of care, which we call that? How do you make sure? And some of the example that I can cite in Pakistan is the work that we have done for increasing the age of marriage, for example, because it was a very successful in Sindh where we created the entire evidence. And that evidence was based on a scientific evidence. And of course, you have to be very conscious of the religious background and people who would come up with a religious argument. So you don't want to go there. So you just place it from, like for example, the WHO says any pregnancy less than 18 years is high risk. So, how do you place that? And of course, bringing the girls' right for education and girls' right to be empowered. So we have this kind of a movement, and then, we led the research, then we, worked on it. We were able to present it to the parliament. It became a law. So we were so excited. It became a law. It was a breakthrough because not other provinces were doing at that time. But again, since it has gone to the public sector, we saw that the law is there, but the implementation is still weak. So then we have to become a kind of, the one who are looking from an accountability perspective. Okay, you have committed for this. This is not happening. So it's a multiple role that we have to do at a different part of that action that has happened. And only then it will happen. Similarly, we were able to have reproductive health and rights law again in Sindh, and is much more progressive in doing these things. But again, the implementation remains weak. So I think the women can play a very strong role there. And for me, the lesson learned is that when you bring them into a groups, when you have a collective voices, but you also have a very clear leadership, and that leadership is across. It's not like one person. Of course, there's always a one person, but how do you make sure that it is across, and then you are doing all the steps. So I think in the climate change area, again, our research has been around the women, in the extreme heat, in the flood situation, the women's impact on her sexual and reproductive health, especially leading to unsafe abortions and all of that. So we have done all of that research, and we are presenting that to the policy, and we have worked that, and we have seen the results because you create an evidence and then you do an advocacy and you're able to do it. But I would still say that the gap of, the kind of the critical mass of the women leaders that we need to have, and the critical mass of women researchers who are effectively be able to do that, is still not what we should be able to achieve. And we feel there is a huge potential, and there is there's not that it cannot happen. It does happen. It does need a coordinated approach. I'm very happy, and thanks to IBA, especially Dr. Lubna, who has introduced me to NTRI, but, very happy to be here because, we have to bring the different sector leaders together to find a solution. And it's not that I can do it and this is something so how do you bring that sector leadership together? And one of the suggestions I would like to present to all the participants here, that, I was able to lead a community of practitioners for social behavior change, which is very important in the work that we do. And we then found out we were the first country, the USA, when it was alive at that time, they told us we are the first country in the Asia to have that community of practitioners. So I feel it's a great effort by NTRI and IBA, and if we have that, the women researchers and the policy policy leaders coming together in a community of practitioners where we share our learnings, the best learnings that we have, and we keep on exchanging that view, then we are able to what has happened in this space, maybe something that would inspire. And how do we encourage and support and then be a learning hub? So you create that learning hub in which we continue to learn from each other, and we continue to have a knowledge management portal. Then we continue to have that. So my advice would be that in order to have more sustainable continuation of the dialogue that we have done today, that we continue to be an active partner. And I'm very happy if that is created, I would be happy to be part of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Yasmeen. I mean, not only for sharing your experience and giving concrete examples across Pakistan. I think recently in Punjab and Islamabad, the same law was passed, and it was a moment to recognize, to celebrate, but also now it comes to the execution. And I think personally, I love the idea of this conversation to be ongoing, to be regular, and to have more and more women, who are making an impact, to have the expertise to come together and to find more solutions to make this impact exponential. So thank you for sharing all of that. Now we have two panelists left. Let's now welcome Dr. Naznin Tabassum, who she's a senior lecturer at the University of Derby. Dr. Naznin, are you with us?
Dr. Lubna has her hands up. She wants to say something.
Dr. Lubna, would you like to please?
Yes, just 1 minute.
Yeah.
Yes. Just 1 minute. Thank you so much, Dr. Yasmeen and Noon. And I would like to announce here a bit of announcement, as Dr. Akbar Zaidi has mentioned, that we should take it forward. This dialogue, we should take it forward. We bring more and more women into this discussion process, and for that, the CBER can facilitate all the women being here and all the women who wants to join the network. We can establish a network under NDRI, or we can jointly establish that network with CPD, with CPI, and with NDRI. And let us establish this network as soon as possible and start meeting. We can meet in person as well. The CBER will do its best to gather all women who could come to Pakistan and organize a conference, a one-day conference or a two-day conference. And we would be happy to hold discussions very often. So with that offer, I'm just offering this incentive to all of you. Hope I will get the positive feedback from all of you, and we will take it forward. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lubna, and we also look forward to more such opportunities. So this could be a great initiative. Now let's welcome Dr. Naznin Tabassum, who is senior lecturer at University of Derby, has a lot of experience, especially when it comes to organizational issues and pedagogic development. And you focused on gender resilience and strategy. So talk more about your research, your work, and what are the unique challenges and opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Am I audible? Can you all hear me well? Okay, that's great. So first of all, thank you so much to Lubna for inviting me, and also thank you to all the experts, for all the conversation. I've been deeply engrossed in hearing your research and your expertise. And also, Zoon, I think you're doing great in terms of hosting the session. Lovely. And also, thank you to the organizers. I think I really like the idea that we really need to be active and we need to do more. I think I'm going to focus on some other factors which we haven't picked up yet. The organizational factors. So I know that there are obviously the social factors, individual factors that would contribute to gender discrimination. Because my research focuses mainly on gender stereotyping. That's my key research focus. And I have published obviously articles, books on that. Also from my experience here in the UK, and also obviously my research dwells on the South Asian countries as well as the Western countries. So why I'm talking about organizational factors is that when women make it to the management, to the leadership positions within the organization, there are obviously several factors, that contribute to gender stereotyping. They continue to face that. So one would be that you do not have the key skills to be promoted. And then when you're promoted, are you adopting male characteristics? So again, you are seen in a different angle. So again, you are humiliated, or, society doesn't accept female leaders to adopt male leadership characteristics. So I think it's very, very important that we be aware about some of these organizational factors, because some of the things, as in providing facilities which are gender specific, that can also influence our perception about gender stereotyping. And also in-group favoritism, which unfortunately is still very much is existence across the world in terms of, favoring your own counterpart or your own group of people. Also threat to self-esteem. So whether your supervisor, your line managers, who should be promoting you or encouraging you for promotion to take up leadership skills, who feels that you could be a threat to their self-esteem, could be something that could be a really disappointing factor, which again influence gender stereotyping. So it is very, very important that we be aware about some of the organizational factors. The other thing is that, again, from my own experience, is women has to speak for themselves. When they make it to those positions, it is very important that if you are aware about any discrimination that you're facing from the specific person or the group, it's important to make them realize, what are you facing. From the giver side, they might think they are doing everything, but from the receiver side, you might have a very different experience. So it is very, very important that you speak up and you share that this is how I felt. Maybe you didn't, intentionally do it, but this is how I have felt it. The other thing as well, that are we aware about unconscious biases? Because sometimes, or most times, we actively gender stereotype unconsciously, unknowingly. And this is not just for men, this is for women as well. So my focus nowadays, what I am trying to do is that raising awareness is very, very important. The key thing is whether we are aware about these issues, whether we know what are the choices we have, and what would be our action plan. And that's why I'm trying to actively work, apart from my research as well, getting involved with different companies. And I'm happy, to open up to other people who are here as well, to provide some of the short courses to, help people understand, not just women, but also men, what are the unconscious biases that exist within the workplace, and how we can combat that through inclusive leadership, and also, again, the resilience building side of things. The other thing I would suggest as well, not to take up too much time, is that we need to invite our male colleagues as well into these panel discussion, not just bringing in expert females, because it's us who would be, either discriminating, or it's from the female that we are facing discrimination. So we want to focus on gender equality rather than just focusing on women or just focusing on men. And that can only happen if both counterparts are present in the discussion so that they can hear, because there are many male colleagues who have been, in the sessions where I have launched my book or shared experiences, and other colleagues, experiences as well. And they said, we never thought that you actually face these kind of discriminations, because these things didn't happen to us. So we don't really know that, you face such kind of discrimination. So, it is very, very important that we bring, other gendered people within the discussion as well. Now the definition of gender has been rewritten. So I would say that it's beyond male and female. We need to encourage and we need to welcome everybody to hear our stories, and also to be part of this action plan that we are, thinking to put forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And that was whatever you mentioned, the kind of stereotype that women are facing, it's important to openly talk about it, to let women know they're not imagining, to let women know that they can choose to adapt the kind of characteristics they feel comfortable with. I think especially when you talked about, even me as a when I just started working, I wanted to be more like a man. I didn't want to be seen as a woman. And it wasn't that I thought women don't belong, whatever. I just thought that there are these certain gender neutral characteristics that fit in better. And I think to some extent, women can also be as confident, not negatively, but slightly more boastful, slightly more open, slightly more extroverted. But those do not have to be male characteristics. They are just characteristics that can help you move forward and progress. So I think that kind of stereotyping, it's important to acknowledge it and to address it and to give more women the space to feel confident. They'll have their confidence from within. They just need the space to
Absolutely. I just want to add to when you mentioned about the confidence. The other thing that we haven't mentioned so far is we do dwell a lot on mentoring. But nowadays, women are highly educated. They are researchers. They are excelling in every field. So again, have we thought about coaching instead of mentoring? Because perhaps the young women, they already know their career path. They already know where they see themselves in 10 years' time or 5 years' time. So again, coaching is a very, very different skills in terms of not telling them what to do, but helping them find the answer for themselves. So I think that's what we need to focus on rather than just, focusing on having that parent sort of ego role that do this, do that. Instead, why not let me think for myself?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think spaces are evolving and very critical skill sets are required. A lot more women know their value and are much more pragmatic, much more extroverted when it comes to seeking opportunities than they were maybe a few years ago. So let's think of more targeted coaching. Thank you once again. Now let's invite again a very known person in this space, Dr. Shikha Thapa Magar, who has been a friend of mine. We both have the China Beijing experience. She has a PhD from China and has focused on agriculture, focused on sustainable development. She's doing very, very impactful work. So over to you, Shikha, for your thoughts on what are the opportunities, challenges, and of course, with you've had a lot of international exposure as well beyond South Asia. How does that help you in playing a role that can impact more women more positively?
Am I audible? Hello?
Yes.
Thank you, Zoon. Thank you. Actually, I would like to thank Dr. Lubna that when we started, when we visited Pakistan, and then when she again visited us, I think at that time we came with the collaboration thing that we need to do together. And from there, I think we started, okay, International Women's Day is the perfect day for us to start something together. So I'm very glad that we could bring, I think, more than 10 panelists from Global South. And I would like to thank all of you for participating and giving your insight regard to the importance of women in research and policy. So myself, working as the executive director at the NDRI, we also work in the intersection of research and policy. So in this intersection, there is both deep meaningful, as well as there are a lot of challenges. As I think all of the fellow panelists have already mentioned, the crucial thing that women face in leadership is the lack of recognition or maybe lack of dialogue platform and lack of networking platform. And also, I think there were a few things that were mentioned about the informal work that of women, which is not addressed. And I think we women who are already in leadership, I think we already have gained a very good position where we can talk about this. And given we also have that type of network right now, I think this powerful networking itself signifies that we are already a step ahead, where we can also provide the platform for the women who are not getting this platform, right? And I think there was also talk about the capacity building programs for the women in research and how we need to promote. So all these things has been already talked, and I'm really glad that we took our time. And I would like to also give some of the experience from research which I had done in agriculture when we provided this climate smart technology to the women to reduce the work drudgery. What we came to know that after they have the ample amount of time, the reduction of the time that they allocate for the agriculture, the time that they have, they again push that into their household work, that is care responsibility. I think that should be again addressed, that how this time should be more allocated for the capacity building. So I think that comes from the policy level also, how we look into it and how we can institutionalize it, and also how the implementation can take place. And also about the education system. I think the education system is very important, especially in the global south, as we have the similar type of mindset. Also, like, I think we come from a very traditional dominated by the men, where women have to always fight for their voice to be heard. And I think most of you have also mentioned that how we get position in some of the areas just for the sake of the quotas, right? And I think that I also have experienced, and most of us have also put that thought into the platform. So I think those changes also we need to do. And also, I want to point to one more thing, that recently we had an election in Nepal. So we had more than 3,000 candidates. And among that 3,000 candidates, we only have 11% representative of female who got the ticket for the election. And among that 11%, only 8% have won the candidacy for the parliament, member of parliament. So you can see that in the leadership position also, we are still behind, right? So the number has increased, the participation has increased, the literacy of women has increased, but still, when it comes to the agenda setters, right, we still lack, we are still behind. So I think we all need to work together. And as Dr. Lubna has also pointed that, I think we need to continue this dialogue. And we are representing different organizations from different nations, coming together here. I think we are echoing the same thing, that despite being in a very leadership position, we still have the similar type of difficulties or challenges that we have to face again and again and again. So again, I also want to talk about the two double bind that women in research and policy we have, that the expectation of assertive leadership that is expected from the woman, but at the same time, we are restricted by the social norms. So I think this type of conflict we all are having, even we want to voice it, but also the social norms put us behind. So I think in that terms also, I think already it has been spoken that it should come from us also, that how we should put ourselves outside and voice and also compete. And also, I think Ms. Shivakoti also have mentioned that how we should also be very updated, also like be very competitive in the society, and not be very set back ourselves that there is a barrier, but also put ourselves outside. So I think women still in very developing country, they are still in a position of in a vulnerability stage, right? So I think those should be also mentioned very properly and addressed in a policy level. And moving forward, I think this forum, I think this webinar has played a very good role, that we all have similar voice, and then we are looking at the direction where I think the equity will be more focused in the coming days and in every part of the world. So in this way, I would like to conclude my short remarks for this webinar. Thank you, June. Zoom, you are muted.
Thank you for letting me know. Yeah. So with that, thank you so much, Shikha, for your intervention. And I just want to say that for me personally, living in a different country, obviously I'm a South Asian. I have lived most of my life in Pakistan, been connected with South Asia and the global South, and now living in a country that is also developing in many ways, but has found very different, unique solutions. They face challenges, sometimes similar to what we are facing, and their solutions might be slightly different. And I think that perspective, which most of the panelists, all of the panelists, in fact, bring on the table, help us make sense of our own individual realities and the spaces that we occupy. So I think firstly, I would like to congratulate both the organizers, which are Center for Business and Economic Research at IBA, and also the Nepal Development Research Institute, for this effort to make this conversation possible on Women's Day, obviously a little after Women's Day, but a conversation that I'm sure will continue, making us as individuals make again more sense of the challenges, sometimes invisible and sometimes visible, of the challenges that we face. Let us know that we are not alone, and make us more aware of the changes that are happening and the changes that we as individuals and as organizations can make possible. So thank you to the organizers, and thank you to each and every one of you for taking the time out. This is only the beginning. I'm so glad that after this conversation, we already have plans to make this a regular topic and to see how we can at least facilitate one another, be a part of the change that we have sought and we have been a part of, and be the best selves. I think lastly, I do say that the best service we can do to the cause of women is to try to be the best version, whether it's in our professions, but you take drive on and improve in whatever fields and careers we are pursuing, to change stereotypes and to show that we don't need to be like men or the opposite of men. We just need to be ourselves, and we can define ourselves very differently from what those before us were able to. So more South-South solidarity. That's something I've always stood for. I'm an international relations scholar, but development, international relations, and the drive for the Global South to be less silent, more vocal, more united is a constant cause for me personally as well. And to each and every one of you for not only taking the time out, but for showing us what more is possible and to giving us more avenues to improve. Thank you. With that, we conclude the event, and we look forward to continuing more such discussions and cooperating tangibly.
Thank you, Zoon. Now, Dr. Lubna, are you there?
No, this is the concluding remarks.
Oh, thank you, everybody. So I think
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye-bye.